Welcome back, and thanks for tuning in to another episode of barSILENCE. My name is Jameson, and I'm your host. Every episode of this show aims to explore the very best video game music from past and present. So if you're new to the show, you can head over to barsilence.com where you can listen to past episodes, see track listings, as well as being able to click an easy link to subscribe on whatever your favorite podcatcher is. And you can also listen on 8beats Radio, where the show plays live on the first Tuesday of every month. Check it out at 8beats.co, or check out the show notes for a link to 8beats and all of the excellent DJ mixes and other video game music shows on the site. In this episode, we're going to be listening to the energetic and catchy music from the Ape Escape series that was composed by house and jungle music producer Soichi Terada. Ape Escape was released in May of 1999 on the original PlayStation. The game was critically praised for its innovative controls, music, and graphics. Some have even called it the best 3D platform game on the PlayStation, and Game Informer later ranked it as one of the best 100 video games of all time. Which is a pretty impressive feat considering that the same year it came out, it was released alongside major sequels like Chrono Cross, Final Fantasy VIII, Gran Turismo 2, and Resident Evil 3. It also shared space in stores with brand new series that started that year, like Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, Silent Hill, Medal of Honor, and Siphon Filter. Looking back, 1999 was a huge year for gaming, and Ape Escape definitely deserves its space in gaming history. Because what made this game notable, and why it was praised in reviews like it was because of how the game controlled. In 1997, Sony released two different controllers for the PlayStation into the market. The dual analog controller came first. This introduced the shape of the PlayStation controller that we're all now familiar with, having two analog sticks in the center. Then later that same year, they released the first dual shock controller, which made vibration feedback a standard feature going forward. The development teams at Sony Computer Entertainment Japan were very excited about the potential for these new controllers and decided to start making a game that centered around what could be possible using two analog sticks as the primary input method. The game that ultimately became Ape Escape was released 2.5 years later, making it the first game that was released where it was mandatory to either have to use the dual analog or the dual shock controller in order to play the game. Ape Escape's distinct gameplay blended traditional platforming elements like running and jumping with continually creative uses for both analog sticks where the left stick controlled the player's movement and the right stick manipulated the gadgets that the main character Spike uses. All of this adds up as a huge innovative step in the evolution of modern platformers. But before I go on, let's listen to some music from the earlier stages in the game. We opened the show with Title Screen from Ape Escape on the Loose for the PlayStation Portable, and underneath us now is Briefing from Ape Escape on the PlayStation 1. In this block, these tracks are very much in line with the platforming genre, but have excellent compositions that make them stand out from others like Spyro, Crash, and Mario. First, we're going to hear Time Station, which plays in the hub-style area of the game where you get to access different stages. Then, we'll follow it with music from the first area in the game called The Lost Land. The next track is called Fossil Field, and then we'll follow that with T-Rex's Lair, and I'll be back after that. Ape Escape's story revolves around a white monkey named Specter, whose intelligence is augmented to genius levels using the peak point helmet that he manages to acquire. Then, using his newfound intelligence, he builds an army of apes who have modified versions of that same helmet. Specter's plan is to use the time station to send his minions across time to change history, reversing the rise of humankind and leading apes to rule the world. As the player, you control the main character Spike, who works with his friend Natalie and the professor who invented the time station to recapture the apes and eventually defeat Specter. This plot remains the same in the remake called Ape Escape on the Loose that was released in 2005 on the PlayStation Portable. It came out just ahead of Ape Escape 3's release in 2006 for the PlayStation 2. This remake wasn't as highly reviewed as the original, and most of the critiques came from the fact that the PSP has only one analog stick. So the controls of the game that everyone loved were somewhat hindered, and the game kinda lost a bit of its appeal. The music, on the other hand, saw the return of Soichi Terada as the composer. He didn't compose for the 2003 release of Ape Escape 2 for the PS2 for whatever reason. But his return to the series with this remake gave him a chance to remix and remaster the game's music, and the results are outstanding. The higher fidelity and extra care and attention put into remaking these tracks brings new life to an already excellent soundtrack. So for this next block, we're going to start things off by listening to the jungle-infused track called Mysterious Age Cryptic Relics, then follow it with Oceana Coral Cave. Then to finish the block, we're going to listen to one of my absolute favorites from the game called Specterland, Welcome. It has deeply rooted influences in that classic jungle and drum and bass sound from the late 90s and early 2000s. It's really hard not to love this one. So enjoy these tracks, and I'll be back afterwards to talk a little bit more about Soichi Terada and Ape Escape 3 on the PlayStation 2. Our featured composer for this episode is Soichi Terada. He is a Japanese electronic music composer who found his musical style after a trip to New York City in 1987 at the age of 22. Terada has claimed that he fell in love with the city and its distinctive sound. So when he returned to Tokyo, he started producing house music and later founded the label Far East Recording after graduating from university in 1990. After that, Terada found his way into composing soundtracks for video games, and in 1998 was given the chance to compose for Ape Escape after the game's director heard his drum and bass track called Sumo Jungle. He now has credits as composer for 7 different Ape Escape games that were released between 1999 and 2007, as well as the Japanese release of Fantavision on the PS2 in 2000. So that brings us to the next game we're going to talk about, Ape Escape 3 on the PlayStation 2. This game is the last main series release, and it came out in 2005 in Japan, and then in 2006 for North America and Europe. The game's story is centered around series antagonist Specter once again. This time he's allied himself with the human scientist Dr. Tomoki to take over a TV station and broadcast Specter TV worldwide. The goal is to put every human on the planet into a mindless trance by gluing them to their addictive TV shows so that the world will be easier to take over. This, of course, leads to really creative level designs and themes based on mocking common TV and movie tropes like the Old West, or martial arts dojos, or beach resorts, like that kind of thing. The game itself received positive reviews for its story, controls, colorful and fun graphics, as well as its replayability with over 400 different apes to catch. So, for this last block, I've actually decided to make it a little bit longer and play 6 tracks from Ape Escape 3 in a row. Each of these tracks really capture that unique blend of house, drum and bass, and jungle that Soichi has cultivated while composing for the Ape Escape series, and I think it really expresses what he does best. First, we're going to hear TV Station, followed by Eversummer Island 2, and then Gadget Training Room. After those, we'll hear Tomoki City 2, Mount Amazing 2, and finally, The Hot Springs, which changes things up in an excellent combination of break beats and traditional Japanese influences that I think you're going to love. So enjoy this block, and I'll be back after that. And that's the show. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed this episode of barSILENCE about the music from a few games in the Ape Escape series on the PlayStation, PSP, and PS2. If you want to interact with the show and tell me what you think about my selections in this episode, you can follow me on a variety of social media platforms. I'm still on Twitter, for now, at barSILENCEVGM. You can also check the show notes to find links to follow the show on Tumblr and Instagram. That's where I'll be posting various information about the games featured in this episode. I also wanted to say that this show has been really enjoyable to work on for the last year. Next month is going to be the anniversary of the show's first year, and I could not be more happy with how this has gone. I want to extend a very heartfelt thank you to everyone who's listened to this show and to all the friends I've made in this last year. barSILENCE would not be what it is without all of you. And since we're speaking of your support, same as always, please consider taking a moment to leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Good Pods, or wherever you find the show, because I'd really love to hear what you think. Don't forget, you can go to barsilence.com to listen to any past shows if you missed any, and of course, if you're feeling giving, you can always support barSILENCE on Patreon. I'd also like to take another moment to thank the show's Patreon subscribers. Zoe and Alusa, the both of you have been supporting the show for a few months now, and I want you to know that your support means the world to me. I really hope you guys have enjoyed this episode. So to end the show, I've got a final track to play us out. We're going to listen to the smooth bossa nova-esque track called Fortune Telling from Ape Escape 3. This song is quite a bit different than the rest of the music in the game, and technically what's in this episode, but I've absolutely fallen in love with it, and I think you're going to like it too. So, cheers friends, thanks again for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.